Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of the Timist Podcast Series. My name is James, and I am the Timist and the host of the thing you're currently listening to. In this part 2 of a 2-part series, Andrew Morgan and I continue our conversation as we wrap up our time together talking about cars, music, and his previous role as a civil engineer. We also learn a bit more about what it's like to be a well-known and recognizable watch industry person, and that includes some funny anecdotes that come with the territory. We also talk about his love for space, science fiction, and his writing endeavors because he's also a writer. Not only that, but he's also a cheese lover, so prepare yourself for some unhinged cheese talk. And although you may think you're ready, I'm telling you right now, you are not. We also discuss video games and how bad Andrew is at them, and ultimately close things out with an Instagram Q&A session. All this and so much more. So sit back, relax, grab a drink and a snack as we get started. Let's shift the proverbial gears quite literally, and let's talk cars for a bit. I know we're both car nuts. What are you driving these days? And to keep with the watch, classic question, what's the grail car?
So, when you start your own business, you kind of put a lot on the line and you move away from a sensible, stable, secure job and a salary that pays the same amount every time. And so you have to reevaluate some of the things in your life in order to channel forwards in the right direction and give yourself the best security. So prior to the car I have now, I had a Porsche Macan, which was my way of compiling all of the things I love about cars, which everything from being able to put something in the boot, that's trunk for you, and it fits, being able to take people somewhere, but also it being fun to drive, like sounds good, handles well, etc., etc. And I've been told, basically by everyone I spoke to, if you want an all-in-one car, it's got to be the Macan. I had that car for 5 years, which is the longest I've ever had a car. And I'm someone who gets itchy tires at the best of time. But that one just ticked so many boxes. It was a perfect car. Price on it wasn't actually too bad pre-owned either, but servicing it, running it, it's expensive. So I wanted to look for a brand that was more affordable to service, like running costs were a bit better and was a bit cheaper to buy and own. And I also, as well, it kind of corresponded as well with this particular brand's shift of gears away from gears entirely, in fact. So I purchased a Jaguar. They're just about to ruin everything with that Fab 1 electric monstrosity that they created. So I purchased a very practical car. I purchased an F-Pace. Great, fits all the stuff in the back. And in fact, the Macan, like the production gear that we've got, didn't quite fit it all. The F-Pace is slightly bigger, so it fits all of that sort of stuff. And it may or may not have a 5-litre supercharged V8 in it, but who's looking?
So you got the, is it the SVR?
The SVR, yeah.
Well done.
And would you believe it? I don't, but would you believe it? It does over 30 British miles to the gallon on the motorway, which is more than the Macan did.
That's impressive. What color is it?
It's red. I can't remember the exact red. Some people are well onto their paint colors, but it's like a metallic red, a deep metallic red. It's very nice. It's very nice. And it sounds like thunder. And it's ridiculous. And I love it.
They do a good job with the SVRs. They do let the cat growl a bit. I like that.
They do. Yeah. You love a good growler. Yeah. The other thing is as well is like this is the end of an era for that kind of engine and that particular engine. And when they released, very badly timed since all the manufacturers have pulled back on electric, when they announced that they were going fully electric, I thought, wow, this is it. I've got to do it now or I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. So between the Breguet and the F-Pace SVR, I'm living my best life.
I'm curious because you live in the UK and you consider yourself to be a Brit. Do you refer to your current vehicle when someone asks what do you drive in the way that Jeremy Clarkson would say, Jag?
People don't really ask. So I've never had to say Jaguar. I definitely don't say what you say, which is Jaguar. Whatever that
I don't
is.
say Jaguar.
Do you not?
Say Jaguar.
Why don't you say why don't you say Jaguar? Is that a conscious? Is it like saying Porsche?
It's because I grew up on Top Gear, Andrew.
Okay.
I'm no Philistine.
um, no one's asked. I don't really know too many people who like cars, to be honest. So no one's really asked. Again, especially if people say, "Oh, you have a Jaguar." Oh, okay, because most of them are shopping cars. They're fairly under the radar and mundane.
So what's the Grail
It
then?
doesn't really come up. What's the Grail? It's childish. It's really childish.
Go
I
on.
would love a Huracan Performante. It's not particularly comfortable. It looks stupid. I'd have it in the bright, like lime green with gold wheels. There's no storage space. You know, the R8 would be a perfectly reasonable alternative to that and has more storage space in the frunk, or I would say fruit.
Please,
But the
please explain.
front boot,
Oh my goodness. Okay. Yep.
yeah,
Right.
keep up, Mr. Jaguar.
Sorry.
But it's just wild. The LM101, I look at it and it makes me giddy. A friend actually let me borrow his for a day at Watches and Wonders, and my key fob thing wasn't letting me in, so I had to go to the customer service desk, reception desk, and there was a dude there behind, and he couldn't have been more than, I don't know. Everyone looks younger than I think. I'm going to say 16. He was probably 22. Because I'm old now, so everyone looks younger than me.
Sure, yes.
And so I was doing the blah blah, this, that, and the other. Clearly, the guy wasn't interested in watches. He didn't have a watch of any sort on. He was just there to do a job. But he said, "That is a really cool watch." And it wasn't my watch, but it made me happy. I was like, "It is a really cool watch. You're right. Well done." And for me, the Huracan Performante is it's just a silly car. It's fun. I see it. I enjoy it. It sounds ridiculous. In fact, I think one of the last times I saw one, I looked down the exhaust because I'm a nerd, and I was like, I can see all the way down to the engine in loud mode. This thing is completely unsilenced. I don't know how the Italians got away with it, but that is just a straight pipe on a production vehicle, and it's just stupid, and it makes me happy.
Only the Italians. Only the Italians.
Exactly.
Well chosen. Well chosen.
Maybe for a daily, I'd have the pura sangue. I thought in pictures it looked ugly. In person, it's gorgeous. It's very coupe-like, very sleek.
You're a rare breed in that you would mix Lamborghini and Ferrari. It's usually one or the other.
I suppose, yeah. You either have one hat and you wear that in the pub and put your keys down, or you have the other, don't you? I would have both. The Pura Sangue feels a little bit more sensible, very naturally aspirated V12. And the Huracan is like, I want to let my hair down a little bit, what's left of it, and be stupid.
I like that you're using the same logic that you use for the Breguet traditional with the Pro Sangue Ferrari. Like, no, because I mean, it's got all the things and it's not insanely expensive except the Ferrari is. So never mind.
Yeah, that's
never
a
mind.
really expensive car. Do you know what I'd also like? I'd like a Rolls-Royce Wraith.
Okay.
I was very fortunate to drive one a few years ago. It was on loan from Rolls-Royce. I think they were considering doing some sort of partnership with Watchfinder at the time. And so I got to borrow one. And oh my goodness, what an experience. It's impossible to describe. But, have you ever been on morphine before?
No, I have not, thankfully.
Well, I had some surgery and they put me on morphine, and it was just like this bliss, this contentment. It's like a contentment I haven't felt since I was a kid on my grandparents' living room floor, colouring in a book and watching Thomas the Tank Engine, where all of your worries and woes are out the window. Don't take drugs, kids. The Rolls-Royce Wraith is the closest thing to that experience. You are in a different world. People let you out of junctions. Everyone is very polite. Everything's very quiet and smooth. The braking, like you press the brakes and that last little bit of braking, you kind of go like that. Even if you try and feather the brake, The Rolls-Royce bleeds the brakes off to a perfect stop for you. It is just complete and utter bliss. And I could do with some of that in my life, I think.
So money can buy you happiness, or at least bliss.
Oh, God, yeah. Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. I have yet to drive a Rolls Royce, but I'm looking forward to the day. I'm so glad that you got to experience that. Now, what watch would you pair if that was you? Like that was Andrew Morgan in
Yeah.
the Rolls Royce Wraith. What watch would you pair with that?
George Daniels, obviously.
Oh yeah, so classy. See, you're so you're such a classy guy. All right, very good.
Yeah. On the point of money buying you happiness,
Hmm.
okay, it's not a guarantee, but it really, really helps.
It really does, doesn't it? It really helps when you can just not have to worry about certain things, eh?
I think so. I think so. It's been a very interesting experience over the last year, you know, being worried about money because next month there might not be any if you don't bring in a client or your videos will tank or whatever. But when you do a good job and someone pays you some money and then you have some money to spend and you buy yourself something nice, it's good. It feels all worthwhile.
Speaking of money, let's talk Formula One. Who are you rooting for? That's one question. And who is
Mm.
actually going to win it this year?
Oscar Piastri is going to win, absolutely. Lando Norris is far too emotional and erratic. He panics. I would hate to be in his shoes right now because he's been building up to this opportunity to have a car that can compete for the championship. And then Piastri's just come in there, cool as you like. Unbelievable. That guy is like a really, really mature talent. I'm actually, to answer your first question, I don't root for anyone in particular. I consider Formula One to be the world's biggest team sport, by which I mean the teams are the biggest of any team sport. Like American football, they have big teams. But some of these Formula One teams have thousands of people in them. And each one of them makes a difference in how the car performs. You can have a team of lawyers at a Formula One team whose job it is to find loopholes in the rules to bring performance to your team, but also to squash performance in other teams by reporting the things that you aren't going to use, the loopholes you aren't going to use, to the FIA such that they get banned. All the way through to the people sat in mission control who are listening to the radios on the other teams looking for just little bits of information, little tidbits of advice that can give them. There's no sport that is so reliant on so many people for incremental gains in performance that can lead to a win or complete back of the grid. We've seen recently a few stupid mistakes, like wearing down the plank too much or not having enough fuel to meet the weight requirements, and how easily it can all come undone. Yet how just a very, very basic strategic decision or a particularly good pit stop or an upgrade, like a small upgrade that brings an incremental thousandth of a second. Like we've seen qualifying end up on the smallest increment that they measure between two cars. And that brings me an enormous amount of joy just seeing that spectacle go on. So I don't really root for anyone in particular. And I'm going to say something controversial right now, even more controversial than the things that you've cut out of this episode. Max Verstappen, I think, is probably he's certainly the fastest driver on the grid, faster than Lewis Hamilton, and is perhaps one of the fastest drivers to have ever lived, like to a level of Michael Schumacher. He has so much extra capacity to think about what's going on. He's routinely dobbing in other drivers for infractions, spotting things on the big screens, thinking about other strategies of drivers who are in a completely different pit stop alignment to him. He is a bastard as well. Like he is a dirty driver. He takes every opportunity he can. But the performance he is putting in, I don't think, if you look at Lewis Hamilton, people say, look at the amount of stuff that he's won, the amount of extra stuff he could have won if only he had won a race here and there. But I don't think if you look at him or Sebastian Vettel or even Michael Schumacher, you will see a bigger discrepancy between the number one driver and the number two driver in a team as you have done with Max Verstappen. Like the chasm between him, it's the cursed second seat, isn't it? No other driver can even come close to him because of what he is able to extract from that car. And so I'm also fascinated to see how he continues to be a threat. And I'm also not surprised to see how Ferrari still can't get it right.
You are absolutely spot on with the fact that, with what you said about Formula One, just being every single person on the team, whether you have a team of 500 or 2,000, and it really does vary greatly between the different teams, depending on, where they're at in the grid. How every role, every job is truly, truly important, and how the smallest of things can make the biggest of differences, especially when you kind of extrapolate that over a whole season, right? If only we would have saved those, whatever, like 2-3 points on that one race in the long term towards the end of the season, that could have made all the difference between, the constructor championship or not.
One of my favorite seasons was the only season that Braun competed in.
With Jensen Button.
With Jensen Button and Rubens Barrichello, with Jensen ultimately winning, and how they purchased a team that had abandoned the sport and just so happened to luck onto a technicality that allowed them to have so much faster a car. And I remember there was a documentary on it. It was fairly good. It wasn't brilliant, but it's worth a watch. How Jensen in pre-season testing had gone out and said, "Oh, I've got this problem, I've got that problem, this doesn't feel right, that doesn't feel right." And they said, "Jensen, you're something like 1.5 seconds faster than everyone else out there." And then the whole season was just this technological race to catch up with that car, which other teams ultimately did. And this battle to the last race to hold on to the advantage they had at the beginning. Like that, the technical stuff is probably as maybe even more exciting to me than everything else, to the point where it makes me smile when you hear, because eventually it all comes out, doesn't it? The stuff that teams have been doing, because it gets outlawed, it's discovered by someone else. The ingenuity of it. I think this is why I love watchmaking as well as Formula One and motorsport. It's just, why is that balance wheel getting stuck? Turns out it's static electricity. How could you ever think of that? How did they? I actually don't know to this day how they did discover that. How do you know that? It's wildly difficult to figure out. And in Formula One, it's their job to find these loopholes, come up with these ideas, like DAS, for example. What a ridiculous idea! Or the F duct.
Yeah.
What a ridiculous idea. One of my favorite ones of those was how Mercedes was getting more power out of their engine. You're only allowed a set amount of fuel, but they were leaking some of the oil, the lubrication, into the cylinders and burning that as well for extra power. And you're just like, it's so simple, but it's so clever. I love it.
Right. And kind of goes against completely everything that you know as a mechanical engineer, to be like, you don't want to do that. That's not something you want to have happen. But you're like, yeah, we know, but we're gonna.
Yeah. And there was another thing as well, because if they have a technological development, especially if it's aero based, they want to hide it. I can't remember which team it was now, but all the engineers were standing around the front wing on the grid, so no one could see this new development that they'd got. And they were trying to keep it very much under wraps. But it turned out the development was actually in the diffuser. And they had just played this complete bluff, where they had misdirected everyone into trying to find the secret in completely the wrong thing. At every competitive advantage. Michael Schumacher, he was a bastard as well. He used to go to the bathroom before qualifying and sit in there for 10-20 minutes so his teammate couldn't use the bathroom before qualifying. So they would have to go out on a full bladder, be stressed and not thinking about their lap time, but thinking about their own comfort. But that was the level of competitive advantage that these people go to.
It's wild because it is a multi-tiered race series where you have the Constructors' Championship. For folks that don't know, that is the car manufacturer, let's say Mercedes or Ferrari. That is the Constructors' Championship. And then you have the Drivers' Championship, as in the individual drivers racing in the cars. So there's 2 trophies handed out at the end of the season. It is fascinating because there's so much tension and inner team politics that takes place between the two drivers. Each team has two cars on the grid with two drivers. The politics and the lengths, as you just described, that each individual driver might go to in order to eke out a little bit more of an advantage over their teammate, let alone over their competition. But I guess in their eyes, if you're actually that killer instinct, win at all costs, everyone is a competitor when you're on the grid. The lengths at which they will go to is mind-boggling.
Yeah. And the constructors and the drivers' championships are kind of in conflict with each other because one, the constructors requires both cars in the team to perform well, and the drivers, you want your teammate to perform worse than you. And so there's this constant negotiation between the drivers and the team to try and make that happen. And we saw that recently in Miami with Lewis wanting to get past Charles and asking the team to do that, and then not actually being any faster and Charles having to be put back, and how badly the team managed those comms between the drivers, as Ferrari always tend to do, and how much that impacts the drivers psychologically for the rest of the season. Am I the number one driver? Am I the number two driver? Am I just going to get put to one side so this driver can go past? I have to prove myself more. I'm going to overdrive. I'm going to end up crashing. There's so much psychology that goes on in it in every moment of that sport. It's just, yeah, I love it.
And I think the Netflix series A Drive to Survive has done a fantastic job of bringing this sort of inner workings and the drama and all the additional layers and aspects to the race series to light for the greater audience. I think it's done wonders. And like Flavia and I watch Drive to Survive every year now, and we love it. It's so good.
It's a very hard sport to get into. It's a really high bar because on one hand, it's 20 guys going round in circles. And there are so many rules and things that happen during a race that if you were watching for the first time, well, what is DRS? Why is that person being given a penalty? I don't know the cornering rules, and I'm not sure that all the teams do either. It's always a coin toss as to whether or not the ruling will go in favor of one or another, let alone all of that stuff that goes on behind the scenes. But for me, I think all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes is as much a part and enjoyment of the sport as the races themselves. Because let's face it, sometimes the races can be boring, but there's so much context to them that it livens the whole thing up for me. And yeah, to your point, Drive to Survive has done a great job of helping to communicate those layers.
I want to shift gears again, although it's not too far, I think, from the topic. You once said that your first album ever was Spice World by the Spice Girls. Care to elucidate, sir?
Well, I wanted to spice up my life, obviously.
Ah, okay. All right. Yeah, that's totally fair. That's totally fair.
So it's the first album that was gifted to me, and it was one that I requested because I think at the time that's what everyone had and wanted, and I sort of wanted to try and fit in. And I did the same as well with one of the Eminem albums that has the Dido song on it. Those weren't for me. And it all kind of changed actually when I was given a cassette tape of Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd. That was my watch Community moment for music. I was like, oh, I didn't realize you were supposed to like music. This is very different. I'm listening to this and I'm enjoying it instead of it just being on and me pretending that it's not making me deeply angry. So Spice World was like an exploration into music, but Wish You Were Here was the discovery of what I actually liked.
Well done. Respect. I just wanted to poke a little bit at that and find out more info. But speaking of things that aren't supposed to anger you, what was it like back in the day to be a civil engineer by trade?
At first, it was actually really interesting because I spoke earlier about how what I enjoy is comms. If I were to break that down into its further constituent components, what I love is problem solving. I like to be given a puzzle and I like to solve it. I do like there to be a reason for doing it. So things like Sudoku feel pointless to me. You go, you've done it, now what? Do another one. Great. What's the net result of this thing? But problem solving is that. And so being a civil engineer was every day solving problems. And those problems were fluid mechanics related. They were geologically related, even to the point where you were given a site and you had to connect these dots. These are the rules. You can't connect them easily. How are you going to fix it? And that was great fun. What I didn't enjoy so much was the problem solving of the people side, which was local government, bureaucracy, all of the stuff. I think in the US you call it zoning, where you go, oh, here's logic. Let's put that in the trash and come up with a new set of rules that make no sense instead. And liaising between the client, the construction firm, and the local government who are providing approval as an authority, and being that middleman where, well, I've done the design to the standards that you require, but you still don't like that for some reason, and you want it to be different, and that makes it more expensive. And I have to go back to the client and say, well, they want it more expensive. And the client says, well, why can't we just have it to the rules? And you go backwards and forwards. That is tedious. Bureaucracy, it's not my thing. I can manage it. I can tolerate it. I can work through it, but I don't want to live it. And I ended up, as I got more senior as a civil engineer, my job was more the bureaucracy and the communication and less
of the hands-on.
solving.
Yeah. I hear that. I hear that. Let's talk about something that doesn't frustrate you, and that is that you're a bit of a hi-fi nerd, aren't you?
Yeah, I am. You can't listen to Wish You Were Here on a pair of Apple earbuds. It doesn't work.
I mean, you
need
can.
To be immersed. No, you can't.
Oh,
You're
okay.
not hearing it.
All right.
You're hearing something else.
I see.
I thought we were supposed to talk about something that doesn't frustrate me. Yes, I am a hi-fi fan. I have been since I was a young boy. And actually, do you know what? Probably before watches, I was probably my first financially irresponsible purchase was some hi-fi equipment.
What'd you get?
It was some Sony separates. I can't even remember the model number or anything like that. But I had become aware that those boombox all-in-one 6 CD changer things weren't the be-all and end-all of sound, and that there was this other level. And this was the era when there were Sony stores on the high street. And I went in and I was looking at these metal boxes with knobs and dials and things. And I thought, wow, very much like again, falls into the same sort of mentality as watchmaking.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, some of the best hi-fi comes from Switzerland and is built out of metal with dials and analog and just feels very delicious and exciting. And I really think, in fact, you know what? It all comes together. Have you ever seen those Patek Philippe? I can't remember what they're called. They're like digital clock units, but they're built like hi-fi stacks.
Oh, yeah.
And they've got gauges on them, and they've got the handles, and it looks like a rack of hi-fi. The master clock system, and I think like the BBC use them and airports use them. They provided really accurate like that. If Patek Philippe and one of those fancy Swiss hi-fi brands did a collaboration and it looked like that, I think I would actually poo my pants.
All right. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. Good. Very good. Very good. Would you sell the traditional and the Jag to buy that?
No, I'd make more financially irresponsible decisions and, eat beans, more beans.
Good answer. Good answer.
Do they do beans like without the juice for cheaper? Maybe.
Speaking of too much, I don't know if you know this, Andrew, but you're kind of famous. Did you know?
Not really. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. It's not a position I ever thought I would be in, but of course, if I go to a watch thing, people are like, "Hey, you're the guy that does the stuff on the YouTube." So, yeah, it's cool. I never expected in a million years for people to be like, "Hey, you're that guy," like at an airport or walking through Manhattan, or someone like you sell something to someone on eBay and they come and collect it and they're like, "You're the guy." Like that is, I don't know how to feel about that. I genuinely don't. On the one hand, it's like, "Oh, thank you so much." On the other hand, I'm like, I'm not prepared for this situation. Oh God, help. It's a whole different thing.
I mean, that was the question, and that is specifically tell me your favorite / weird story of getting recognized in public. Do you have one?
Do you know what? I think there are many people who create videos on the internet who have fans who are not the kind of people you would want to meet in real life.
Hmm.
I don't think I've met anyone in one of those out of the blue experiences where it's not been an utterly friendly, pleasant, polite exchange where the person says, I just wanted to say I really enjoy your videos. You know, I got into watchmaking because I got into watches because of you. Blah, 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 blah. I just wanted to say hello and thank you so much. And we have a exchange a few pleasantries, and they go, I'll leave you to it. You know, you're a busy guy. Off you go. They're almost exclusively like that. Probably the strangest one though was in the queue for the check-in desk at the airport, where a guy was like, "Oh, I'm going one way and he's on the other one." I'm like, and he's like, "Oh, you're the guy from the thing." And we have that exchange of pleasantries, and it's like, "Oh, the queue's moving now. See you later." But then we meet again 8 more times, and by the end, even he's like, "I'm sick of you. I'm never going to watch your videos again. We can't keep meeting like this." And we were like, "Oh, I hope we're not sat together on the plane. That'd be awkward." By the end, it was just sort of polite, kind of like friendly nods. Yeah, nearly over.
I love it. I love it. You're also a big fan of sci-fi. Is that why you picked up space photography? Are you secretly hoping to be the first person to detect life outside of Earth, Andrew?
If I can go to space in my lifetime,
Hmm.
I can call it a day. I think like that would be incredible. I like science fiction because of the limitlessness of it. Now that can lead to some really crap stuff, and there is a lot of crap sci-fi. But I love the exploration of what's possible. Again, that's why I love things like MBNF. Again, it's why I love Formula One, pushing what is possible to the utmost limits and being surprised and delighted by what people can come up with. And science fiction is, again, one of those things. It's something I try and contribute to, but the ideas that people come up with are just so incredible. And again, sometimes they're just the simplest ideas that unravel a thought that you've never had before, that lead you down a path that's just wild. And for me, astrophotography is an exploration of things that you discover that are increasingly more incredible. Not just from my own discovery process and learning about things I didn't know about before, but because there are people out there who are discovering this stuff right now, who are dedicating their lives to looking at these tiny little things that they see that are happening in a patch of sky that is little more than holding a grain of sand up at arm's length, looking in that dark patch of sky, thinking there's nothing there, exposing a telescope camera, exposing for longer than anyone has done before, and then discovering another 1,000 galaxies occupying just that space. All of these little things, they just open up your mind to something you've never thought of. And I love that. I love having the thought that's never gone through my brain before, that takes everything I know and just sort of shifts it slightly to the left. It makes me feel privileged to be able to be in an era when that kind of thing can be understood, or at least discovered, where previous civilizations would look up at the night sky and go, "Oh my God, there's the god or aliens or something." And we can look at things now and say, "That is this, that weird. Oh, what? How can we see those two galaxies exactly the same? Oh, that's because there's a black hole in between lensing space, so you're seeing the one thing twice." And so it means that the time dilation between the two things means we saw a supernova in that one part. We know that we'll see it again in 15 years because of the dilation, and how they can predict this stuff and know it. And actually, if you think about how much we've advanced from where we were previously, how much more advancement there is to be, we still cut people open to do surgery. Now, that's pretty barbaric. Think about what science is going to be doing and discovering again in 10, 15, 20, 30, 100 years, long after we're all gone, or heads in jars, which is, I've got my money on heads in jars.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that makes me sad is not getting to be able to discover all of the things that will be discovered once I'm gone.
That is a pretty sad turn of phrase right there, but that's okay. That's all right. Let's live it up while we can in that case. But speaking of
Very
living it
much.
up, I made a joke in the intro about you really loving cheese, but what's that all about, truly? And also, second half of the question, would you spend your hard-earned cheddar on the Moser cheese watch? You see?
I mean, first and foremost, anyone who doesn't like cheese, they're either lactose intolerant, in which they probably do like cheese, but it doesn't like them,
Mhm.
or there's something wrong with them. Do you like cheese?
Preach it. Of course I do.
Everyone should like cheese. And I so happen to live in a place, I'm a half an hour drive away from France. And also in the UK, we have many of the great emissaries of cheese. Cheddar Gorge, for example, where I have visited and seen the cheeses growing in the wild. They run freely through the fields of cheddar, and it's a sight to behold. You can only capture so many though because they are endangered.
I see.
But you know they have a season every year where it is allowed. You can only use ropes and cardboard and bits of string to capture the cheeses.
He persists. He continues.
Well, it's true.
Right, right.
Don't mock our culture.
So no. I'm laughing for different reasons.
So cheese rolling is a sport that is partaken in every year, whereby a bunch of folks gather together at the top of a very steep hill. They roll down a wheel of cheese and chase after it.
Oh, I do know this.
Much injury ensues.
I do know this. This is wild. And it's every year?
Yeah. So the origins of that are when they used to chase the wild cheese rolls in the past. Now they're all farmed, obviously, so it's a much more controlled experience. But back in the day, you would have to go and catch them. That's where that comes from.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you
So,
for helping us all understand.
my own celebration of that is to have one shelf in my fridge dedicated entirely to the artistry of cheese.
Okay.
Sometimes it's got cheese strings and baby belts in it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just got some grated mozzarella to make a pizza with. Other times it's got like 100-year aged quartz cheddar with beautiful crunchy crystals in it, or like a stinky bishop, or all kinds of things. You know, it changes, it ebbs, it flows. It's like an evolving thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's never the same thing twice.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very, very delicious.
All right, respect. I can't wait to see your cheese shelf when I visit one day. And then I
I've got another
expect you
cheese
to.
story for you.
Do you? Please.
So, yeah. Sorry to interrupt, but it's a really good cheese story. I was in France, and I stayed in a chateau in the Champagne region with some friends, and it was a very, very lovely experience and much more affordable than you're all thinking. And they had a restaurant attached to the chateau that was a very, very good restaurant, and it was like a billion courses entirely made of butter, and at the end there was a cheese course, and the guy wheels up, I can only describe as an articulated truck full of cheese, of different cheeses. And he said, "What would you like?" And I was like, "I don't know. Pick for me. Pick whatever you think is good." So he picked a bunch of different things, and sat the plate down and ate different cheese. Oh, that's good. Oh, this is a creamy one. Oh, like this one's a bit more of a blue cheese, or this one's a kind of a harder cheese. And then there was one cheese that was incredibly familiar. It had sort of a soft cheddar consistency, maybe like kind of slightly creamy, but the flavor was so. I passed it around. We all tried it. We're like, yeah, that's really familiar. We couldn't place it. Is it like does it taste a bit like meaty, or does it taste a bit something savory about it, very umami? And I think it was one of those meals that just lasts for hours, and you can eat a bit because you're so full that everything's up to here by this point. And about an hour later, I can't even remember who had the thought, but it came. That cheese tasted exactly like beef hula hoops. If you don't have beef hula hoops, they're like a little hoop-shaped, what you would call chip, that we would call a crisp. And this cheese tasted exactly like this sort of supermarket grade beef flavored chip. It was wild. But the satisfaction of having solved that particular problem and being like, yes, that's what it tastes like. That was the most satisfying part of the entire meal.
God knows how expensive that cheese was. And you're like, yes, supermarket hula hoop chips, crisps, is what it is. Lovely. Lovely. Thank you for sharing. You're such a problem solver. You love solving these problems, don't you?
I do. It made me very happy. If I hadn't solved that particular problem, I would have been an absolute misery to be with for the rest of the evening.
I can only imagine. But tell me, would you buy the Moser cheese watch?
So I've had the great privilege of being able to experience the cheese watch along with many others of the wonderful and wild lineup that they've created over the years. My favorite of that collection, which I got to enjoy before it was sold to its lucky owner, was the Pandemonium, the Panda Watch, the collaboration between MB&F and Moser to make probably one of the greatest watches of all time ever, to infinity and beyond. I also got to try on the Swiss Icons watch that was the homage to every brand ever. That was a real Cinderella moment because the clasp didn't fit. It was too tight, but I made it fit. I couldn't actually open my hand. It was so tight that it compressed my tendons to the point. To try this at home. If you ball your hand up into a fist and then you squeeze the underside where your tendons are, and then you try to open your hand, like you can't. That's what it was like wearing that watch, but I did it. Unfortunately, the cheese watch, being made of real cheese, is incredibly delicate now. So they are trying to preserve it so it doesn't just crumble into like cheese glitter. I mean, here's how they should go out with it. They should make a beautiful pasta dish. Oh, actually, maybe they should do Swiss have terrible food. Let's be honest. The Swiss, they think melting cheese onto potatoes is a good idea.
They're pretty good.
Fine.
They're pretty good with chocolate.
No. That's not food, is it?
Well,
it's a treat.
Okay, fine. Technicality.
So pasta, a lovely pasta, like something simple, maybe like a cacio e pepe or something like that. Really, really basic. And then the last hurrah for that watch is to grate it over the top and eat it. And be very sick.
And be very, very sick. So instead of like black truffle shavings, it's a Swiss. And just the thought of it is messing me up. It's a Swiss cheese watch made by Moser.
Yeah. Aged cheese. Aged in the safes of Moser HQ.
Could I interest you in some Moser, sir?
Oh, well, Biver makes his own cheese, doesn't he? Jean-Claude Biver, he makes his own cheese.
He does.
I've not ever had some of his own cheese. I've heard it's fine.
Okay. Well, is it fine in the British way where it's like, you guys are very understated in how you describe things. Like I just flash back to like the Great British Bake Off and someone says like, that's nice. And that's like high praise. Like saying something that's nice is wow. Is saying that's fine?
I mean fine in like the passive aggressive way.
I see.
Like, yeah.
Well, you're not getting
your, I guess.
You're not getting your annual allocation of a cheese wheel sent your way this year from Mr. Biver.
No, nor did I ever before. So there's a little space in my cheese drawer on my cheese shelf, especially for that, but it remains empty.
Sadness. Cue the music. Let's jump away from cheese. You're also a gamer, which is sort of my day-to-day trade and craft. What have you been playing as of late? And tell me, Andrew, how many of those hours were spent in Valorant becoming awesome?
I first played online games when I was a teenager, and I discovered I was very bad at them, and it made me very angry.
Oh no.
And I didn't like the angry person who kept dying immediately as they were spawned. So I did not touch online gameplay ever since. I'm a single player through and through because I can cheese single player. I can, let's bring that theme back again. I can cheese the ever-loving whiz out of single-player games. You can't cheese people who are really good online. I've been playing Zelda Echoes of Wisdom with my wife, who also enjoys a bit of computer gaming. I actually paused Tears of the Kingdom, another Zelda game,
Another Zelda
to play
game.
this. I don't get much time to play games anymore, so I kind of like jump on here and there. I've got a big pile of games waiting for me, including Elden Ring, which I haven't even started yet.
Yeah, so that's the rest of your life, basically.
Yeah, and I know that's the case. And I love and hate From Software games in equal measure, as I think all fans of the series do. And I know that I'm not in the place in my life right now where I have the time to dedicate to being that angry again.
Yeah, we don't like an angry Andrew. We need a happy Andrew. So let's get you some more cheese.
Do you know what I love about the Dark Souls and Bloodborne series is that when I grew up, if you got stuck in a computer game, you just had to figure it out. You had to problem solve that. Unless you really, really wanted to go and buy one of those books that came with a magazine, but you had to like flick through the entire book to find the right thing. And I couldn't be bothered with that. Also, I couldn't afford the little books. I spent all my money on the game. So I had to figure it out. And so things like the code is on the CD case were both simultaneously very frustrating and very satisfying moments at the same time. Points to you if you know what reference that is. And these days, you can just go online and Google it. You just go, how do I get part? Oh, the key's in over there. I have to. Actually, do you know what? Tell a lie. I bought a book once. I bought a book once. It was Tomb Raider 3. And it was the opening level, and I was stuck. I just could not figure out where to go next. And that was a notoriously difficult game. And when I got the book and I read through it, I felt very ashamed, but also satisfied in the sense that I never would have discovered this thing, and I don't know how anyone would. There was a button to open a hidden door, and the button is completely invisible. And it's just in a part of the level, you just had to like basically shuffle along the entire level, pressing the action button until something happened. So that's the only time I got one of those books. With the Dark Souls series, if you Google how to do it, you know what the answer is, don't you?
Yes, yes.
You
Everybody
have
knows
to
the
get
answer.
good.
You got to get good. That's bottom line.
You've just got to get good. You've just got to level yourself up. You've just got to do it again and again and again until you achieve it. And there is something in this day and age of the internet, of fast, quick ways to deal with your problems without actually dealing with them. There's something about that series of games where you just have to do it. You just have to get good. You either give up or you succeed. That I very, very much like and try to embrace in the rest of my life. Although I try not to get as angry in the rest of my life as I do on the 29th time of trying to kill the Orphan of Kars.
It is what it is. It's an entertainment avenue, but also it seems like an avenue to enrage yourself for the fun of it.
It's an outlet.
Some of our viewers and listeners may know this, but some may not. But you're actually quite the successful science fiction writer yourself, aren't you? How's that coming along? But more importantly, why haven't you sent me your entire compendium of published literature? Too busy, are we?
Why haven't you purchased it on Amazon? Too cheapskate, are we?
Touche, touche. Such a wordsmith you are.
So I do feel bad because you actually gifted me a copy of Halo that you had worked on. Unfortunately, I didn't have the requisite console to play it, which is a shame. But it is in my lovely pile of sweet keepsakes that I'm very happy to own. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So yeah, that was one of many explorations of communicating storytelling. I mean, literally was storytelling, and I've written somewhere between 6 and 7 novels. I have one that's been sat doing nothing for probably the better part of 5 years. There was an opportunity to make something of it, but it never really materialized. And then the industry itself shifted gears in quite a significant way that meant it wasn't really possible as an individual to do it anymore. So you may have heard of authors like Hugh Howey, who was the writer of Wool, which has since become the Apple TV series Silo. Andy Weir, who wrote The Martian, which was the film starring Matt Damon called The Martian. And that was the era that I came in on the tail end of, when you could be a self-published author and actually have success through Amazon. Unfortunately, that success then became a pay-to-play situation, which meant it just then turned back into traditional publication. And to be traditionally published is very challenging if you are a mediocre writer such as myself. But I did have a couple of sort of near misses, if you like. So one novel, I had a long discussion with Amazon. Actually had their own like publication imprint, so they did self-publishing, but they also opened up their own imprint. 47 North was their sci-fi one, and we were discussing a 3-book deal off the back of one of those stories. The discussions closed for the Christmas break. They opened up in the new year, and they said, we're actually changing everything. We're not doing that kind of stuff anymore. So this 3-book deal that was held tantalizingly in front of my face was pulled away. Another book that I'd written, I think I sold something like 50,000 plus copies of. I got an audiobook deal for that. That went down really well. Actually, the plot of that book was replicated almost one for one by Mur from Impractical Jokers, who released exactly the same story, which was wild. I said to my agent, like, can he do that? And he said, you can't copyright an idea. Soz. But that book had some movie rights interests and stuff like that, but again, just didn't materialize. And ultimately, nothing really materialized. By which point, I'd found another medium with which to share storytelling, and had gone full bore into that instead.
Yeah, I may not have read all of your books, or maybe even one, but I do know that you're a good writer because your storytelling skills are aces, at least in the little corner of the world that we sort of dabble in, which is watches. So don't you dare minimize my love and affection for your skills, Andrew.
My happiest moment with my storytelling, novel writing in particular. So I wrote a book. The books I'd written previously were aimed to be like a techno thriller that had like this baked in potential to be a movie and be popular. But I wanted to write a book like for me. And so it was a coming of age science fiction story about a guy, a boy, a 13-year-old boy who lived on a space station, like orbiting Jupiter, who didn't have any friends. Like the other kids weren't particularly friends with him. And his main friend, his only friend, was the ship's computer. And for his 13th birthday, on this station, which like has a load of families on it, you are then old enough to be permitted to go on one of like the extravehicular, like little pod things that flies around and comes back, and like that's a thing that you are then legally allowed to do. So he goes on one of those by himself with the ship's computer. Like his parents are very busy, hardworking people, so they're not really there to celebrate with him. And there is an accident, and the station is destroyed, and he's left stranded in this little pod, and he has to make his way back to Earth, just him and this computer trying to problem solve their way through. And it actually has a little bit of a tragic ending, which I just threw in there to be miserable. But it's like a heartwarming story. And anyway, so one of the people who'd read it was a teacher at a school in Florida, like a younger kids school, not
Elementary.
high school, elementary school, yeah. So and it was a big elementary school, and they were doing a space week, and they had like astronauts coming in to do talks, and they were doing like projects like building rockets and stuff like that, doing this sort of stuff. And they got in touch with me, and they said, we would love it if your book was the book that we read during that period to be part of our whole space thing, because we think like it relates to the kids, like it feels like it's got a lot of accuracy to it. Like I kind of pride myself on trying to ground things, even if they are in science fiction world. And I was like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. It's like, oh, well, then would you do an interview afterwards with the kids, and they can ask you questions? And I was like, yeah. And I think this book had been out a year or two by this point, so I'd completely forgotten about the ending. And so these kids did the interview with these kids, and they were like, oh, how did this happen? Or what about this? Or asking me about writing all this sort of stuff. And one kid was like, why did this sad thing have to happen at the end? I was like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that.
Oh my God.
Oh, this kid was like, but why, mister?
Oh,
why?
What did you say? Did you say it's because I'm British?
I said, it happens, kid. Get used to it. No, I can't remember what I said. I was like, oh, sometimes, so like, oh, I can't everything, but this was good. So, yeah, I don't know. I think I just word saladed my way out of it ish, but it was an unreal experience to be able to have these kids on the other side of the world consuming this, being part of this little world that I'd created, and it having an impact on them, and then reflecting on it and sharing that experience with me. It was unbelievable.
That's incredible. What
Mm.
an experience, and what kind of validation and feeling that must have been for you to, especially with that audience, right? I mean, it's one thing you're usually surrounded by, grown-ups talking about, movements and beat rates, and now you have tiny children that have read your work and asking tough questions.
It was very validating to make a whole bunch of children sad.
All right. Let's put a pin in that. Thank you, Andrew. Well done.
I felt incredibly validated and powerful in a way.
Mm-hmm. 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 Can you please hand me the shovel that you're currently holding? Just stop digging yourself into this hole deeper and deeper. Yeah. Okay. Well, I made some mistakes as well in my life, and I put up a post on Instagram on my account, and I asked people, what questions would you like me to ask the great Andrew Morgan? And I got some. And now I'm just going to read them out to you, rapid fire style. So please feel free to provide, succinct responses to your
Well,
liking. Yes. R Park 1126 says, "Will I ever get a Rolex Pepsi from an AD?"
yeah, of course, if you're willing to play the game.
We continue with R Park 1126. It's a two-parter. Part one, what is your take on the tariffs and how will it affect the watch industry?
My take on the tariffs is that they exist, and how will it affect the watch industry? It will make watches more expensive.
Part two, do you think more in-demand pieces such as Rolex will become available as a result?
I wouldn't have thought so. If anything, it's going to drive up the pre-owned prices in America of desirable watches, which will then only make the desirability of the new pieces, tariff or otherwise, more so. So it kind of nets out, I think. I think for desirable pieces, it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But for stuff that is not as desirable or a bit more niche, it might give you more opportunities. I'm very interested. There's an auction on at the moment in Geneva, and I'm interested to see what pieces don't go for as much because the American audience is less likely to partake. But also, I've been interested to see some pieces that are going way above what I expected in a returning confidence that people are having as the market is sort of bottoming out and settling out, and they're starting to buy into things that they think will have investment potential in the future.
All right, we keep going. Our Park 1126 still says, what high fashion brands would you consider buying a watch from and which models?
High fashion. I don't know anything about fashion. I think so. Louis Vuitton
Mm-hmm.
has been doing some very interesting stuff. And
With the
some people are
tambour.
like, they're ruining independent watches and they're getting involved where they don't belong. But I think of all the things they could be doing, they are doing the right things in the best way that is possible to be done in that circumstance. So, like Daniel Roth, do I prefer the pre-owned prices of Daniel Roths to the prices of the Daniel Roths that are coming out from LVMH? Yes. Do I think that the collaborations between Louis Vuitton and, say, Recep Recep'i or Kari Voutilainen are a little bit commercial? They are, but the net result is also pretty cool, and they're supporting some great talents. The tambour, especially the weighing scales style, I forget what the name is, are objectively good-looking watches. Would I spend that much money on them? Probably not. Will they make interesting pre-owned purchases? Some of them I think are going to gain value. Some of them I think might lose a little bit of value. But certainly, of all of the fashion brands, they are doing the most exciting stuff. Second to that, actually, I would say Chanel. Less what they're doing with their own watches. The Monsieur, whatever it's called, is pretty cool. Designed the movement, designed in collaboration with Romain Gaultier, I believe. But they, as a business, are also investing very cleverly in other watch brands like Jean, I think, MBNF and Romain Gauthier in a way that is not invasive but supportive. And I find that quite interesting because we're in this world where building a brand is all about, building a business is all about year on year percentage increases in order to sell. And the thing the business does is kind of secondary to that. And if the thing the business does is good, that process tends to destroy it. Whereas the approach that I think LVMH and Chanel are taking, maybe I'm naive, but it feels more about the long-term stability of very cool independent brands than it does about short-term financial gain.
A very comprehensive answer. Well done. Well done.
Thanks.
This next question is still from rpark1126, and this is why I feel not smart for having offered the option to ask questions. Could you please ask James for a live wrist shot?
James, could we have a live wrist shot, please?
I suppose. It is the Breitling Navitimer 43. See what you made me do. All right.
Do you not like showing your watch? I feel like you've got some beef with this guy.
It kind of goes back a few months where people would tag me in "What are you wearing?" stories on Instagram, and I never ever show what I'm wearing because I feel, again, this is just personal sentiment, I feel like you're asking me to do homework. Like, show me what's on your wrist, and like, I like taking nice photos, and if I'm just gonna like do this, I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. So yeah, I don't respond to what's on your wrist requests. And for a little while, I was making these fun, silly videos that I would post in response to the requests, and it was just getting more and more ridiculous in my manner in which I would say no. I'll send you some examples. Yeah, or I could just post them here for people that are watching to see. But
give
yeah,
the people what they want.
No.
Dance, boy, dance.
No. We keep going. Watchcology says, will you commit to all future piece uniques being in red? I think he's referring
I
to
don't think so.
The Bel Canto. Oh, there we go. We
Check
finally
that
get a
buster
wrist shot.
out.
There you go.
There we go. You do one red watch, and everyone thinks you're the red watch guy. I very much feel for Richard Bentz and his watermelon watch. Maybe red might come out again, but my goal with watch collaborations, of which I have done one as AMW so far, is to create watches that I think people want more than anything. Watches that I really like, but also that I think other people will like too. I don't want to fall into the trap of being self-indulgent or trying to advertise myself to a ridiculous degree with something that I do. The goal is, if no one knew that I was involved, would it still be successful? Like that's the kind of metric that I try and pride myself with. And I had identified red as being a very, very popular color. Like literally, as in when you Google what are the most popular colors, it's blue, green, red. And you just don't see red watches. So I was like, let's do a red one. And we're starting to see a lot more red dial watches coming out this year. Because, being the fashion trendsetter and tastemaker that I am, everyone else is following suit. So would I do another red one? Another watch with a red dial? Maybe, if the watch suited it. But it's not going to be my thing.
Okay, we move on. Scott Casey, F8, says, what are his thoughts on Helm and other micro brands, and what is his favorite micro brand?
I have never heard of Helm.
Helm.
Helm, as in
Helm. At the helm.
The helm of a ship.
Correct.
Or short for helmet.
Correct.
In our school, when I was a kid growing up, we would call each other helms. You complete helm.
Oh, short for you complete helmet.
Yeah.
As in the, yep. Okay. All right. And what is your favorite micro brand, Andrew Morgan? Do you have one?
There are a lot of micro brands, aren't there? I don't think I can consider Studio Underdog a micro brand. I think they've got their together way too well for that. I would say, is Colloquium a micro brand? Because they've got some pretty, switched on people working with that. Yeah, I think we can call that a micro brand. Colloquium is very cool. It's very infrequent. It's very infrequent that I see a watch that I look at and go, wow, that is a new idea. And as we've discussed, I like things that are new and interesting, but also not just gimmicky for the sake of it. And not just the style of the dial and the hands, the pin markers that they have, but the case styling as well and the way that crystal integrates with it. It's just so different and interesting. So I would say Colloquium.
Watching Bonsai says, any tips for how to stay disciplined and save for that big boy watch?
Don't buy other watches.
Watches and Blunders says, what is something that brands do continuously that you cannot stand?
Okay, this is probably like behind the curtains sort of stuff, really, that may not contextually make a lot of sense to the people listening. There are a lot of brands that I have spoken to who have an aspiration to grow. That makes a lot of sense. But that aspiration to grow often comes with this brainwave that there are only so many people in the world who actually like watches, but there are a lot more people out there who have lots of money to spend and they don't like watches. Why don't we sell to them instead? With the thinking being people who like watches are harder to sell to because they know what they're talking about, and people who don't like watches are going to be easier to sell because they haven't done their research. When someone who is interested in luxury in a broad sense or fashion in a broad sense, they'll go, Rolex, I've heard of them, I'll buy that. Oh, Chanel, I've heard of them, I'll buy that. I don't need to know who Chanel was. I don't need to know about her story and how she got there. I just know that that is a brand that is worth having. And so there is an element of logic there that kind of makes sense. But the problem is all of those brands got there by being collector favorites, by being hugely successful at auction with vintage pieces, by being absolutely domineering in the industry. So it's all very well and good, but it's like a Formula One team saying, like, why are we bothering with what we're doing and coming like way back in the midfield? Let's just make a faster car. Yeah, sure, but how?
Great point. Great point. And thank you for sharing. That is a little bit behind the curtain. So very interesting indeed. We continue. Idiot Watch asks, when's the book coming out?
Good. It's not. It's not. My aspiration for the next book to come out is one that goes through a traditional publisher in the old-fashioned way, in a way that's never going to happen in my lifetime. So the short answer is, it's not. Soz.
Swisswatch_ing says, why doesn't he follow me? Laughing face. He misses a lot of great content. Laughing face to flexing biceps. Why don't you follow Swisswatch_ing, Andrew?
Do you know what? Actually, he doesn't know this, but I was in a bar in Dubai and I saw him. He was very rude to a waiter there.
Oh.
And I just don't stand for that. I don't, treat other people how you want to be treated yourself.
I actually know him. His name is Phil. He's very sweet and very kind.
You didn't see him then. He'd had a few. He'd had a few too many. That was the problem.
Okay, we continue. Joe's Watches says, what is your favorite thing about James?
I don't think about him in that way.
Thank you. Okay, we soldier on. Thanks, Andrew.
When we first met in person, and then we spent some time together, I think my favorite thing was the infectious positivity. Like, I asked you some questions about your current working situation and stuff like that, and we wanted to go to a restaurant that was closed, and you were really excited about going to this restaurant, and we had to go. I think, what did we go to? We went to IHOP instead. But you were like so positive about the whole experience, and I'd never been to an IHOP before, so in terms of like ticking some of those cliche boxes, it's like, you got to go to an IHOP at some time. I had a great time, but you were just so positive about the whole thing. I don't think I've ever seen you be negative about anything ever in my life. Maybe you bottle it all up and, take it out on your loved ones. I don't know, but
That's very kind. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And there you go, Joe. Context, Joe and I go back, way back, 10 plus years to the days of Halo. So there you go. Joe's a very sweet, sweet, sweet guy. And he's also a watch collector. And we just kind of found ourselves in the last, I would say, year in the watch space. And it was a very serendipitous reunion. So yeah. Yeah. Okay, two more
also a
questions.
raging drunkard.
No, he's not. Joe is sweet and nice. I see what this person did. I know this person. They have two different Instagram accounts and they asked very similar questions from both different accounts. Big Fat Meow's Watch Journey asks, how did you get so lucky to become friends with the one and only The Timist?
Well, I'd been stalking him for a while. That actually wasn't my first visit to Seattle. And I'd seen him through binoculars from a distance. And I thought, I bet that guy has great stem cells. I need to harvest those stem cells
Oh
to
my
hasten
God.
my aging process.
Oh my God. That took a turn real quick. Huh.
Well, it was a Watchfinder event, wasn't it, in
Yes.
Seattle that you attended?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we hit it off.
The funny thing
Much
is that I
kissing
actually,
later,
oh, okay. Yeah. Well, let's not talk about that. I think you made a joke. We had chatted briefly prior, and I think you made a joke of like, yeah, well, I didn't put your name on the list. So, see what happens at the door. And funnily enough, my name was not on the list. I showed up and it was not
Yeah, I told
there.
you.
Yeah, I thought you were joking, but you weren't. You don't mess around. Andrew, straight shooter through and through.
The reality is that you fell for me when you heard my Kermit the Frog impression, of which I will not be repeating on this.
That's okay. I have the footage, so I could just play it here. If that's okay with you, of course.
No, it's absolutely not okay.
Insert clip here.
Kermit the Frog.
Wait for the check in the mail. Well, you've done it, Andrew. You've reached the end. As a thank you, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to talk about something that you feel passionate about or something that you'd like to shine a light on. This could be literally anything from a local nonprofit to a great movie you've just watched and you just literally can't stop thinking about, or to a book that you'd recommend or a cause that you'd like to shine some light on for more people to know. The floor is yours, sir. Please take it away.
Well, thank you so much for asking. It's been a very interesting year for me, and one that has given me as much opportunity to look inward as it has outward. And I've really taken the chance to reflect on who I am and what I've been over my life. And it's taken me in a direction I didn't expect, like a really, really different direction. One of finding sort of peace and reconciliation. And I don't think I've really shared this, but I've since become an incredibly devout consumer of K-dramas. The Korean television format, which has massively taken over my life and the life of many people outside of Korea as well, for a level of storytelling, emotion, fun, just this kind of warm, lovely nostalgia, and this sense of being that you just don't get in Western television at all. It all started with Crash Landing on You, a show where a high-flying executive at a department store brand chooses to test their upcoming high-integrity sportswear by parasailing off of one of the mountains outside of Seoul and is blown into North Korea, where they get stuck in a tree and are rescued / captured by a North Korean soldier, and such romance ensues. That is absolutely a real show, and I thoroughly recommend you watch it. Every episode is like an hour and a half long, and it's like 20 episodes, so it's a commitment. I've since watched maybe 15 more K-dramas since, and I'm currently watching Hometown Cha-Cha-Cha, about a lady, a dentist in Seoul, who has a falling out with her boss and finds herself unemployed, and so goes to a seaside town to open up a local dentist surgery there. And the conflict between the city people and the country people, it's very heartwarming. It's very lovely. That's the journey that I've been on, and one that I thoroughly recommend everyone else also follow. I could say I've become radicalized by these K-dramas. It's an experience that has changed me as a person for the better and continues to change me still.
I promise you, never in 1,000 years would I have expected you to take us on this journey. Thank you for sharing. I don't know what else to say. You've enriched many people's lives, I think, with this knowledge that you've shared. Wow. Just.
I'm not even joking either. K-dramas are really good.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. I believe you. Comment, please, if you've heard of any of the K-dramas that Andrew has shared, and if you'd recommend any additional ones that he may have missed, because I think you shared 2 of the 15 that you said that you're watching.
Mm-hmm. Would you like to share some more?
I think we're okay. I think we can maybe let folks discover on their own. But if people have questions, they could probably reach out to you. Yes.
Okay, a little hurtful, but fine.
No, I'm trying to respect your time, Andrew. You've been here for the little counter at the bottom says 2 hours and 44 minutes. It's been a while, and I'm trying to respect you is all. Not that I don't want to hear more of K-drama.
And I'm looking forward to seeing the final 30-minute episode as most of this ends up on the cutting room floor.
Let's see what Edit James has to say. But speaking of getting in touch with you, what is the best way for people to reach out to you should they have any more questions for you?
Instagram, Andrew Morgan Watches.
Instagram, Andrew Morgan Watches. Excellent. Well, Andrew, did you have fun? And would you consider coming back and doing this all over again in the future with me?
I did, although I think I have exhausted all my best cheese stories. So I'll have to indulge in a different hobby and, furnish myself ready to go again.
Somehow I don't believe that you've exhausted all of your cheese stories. Somehow I believe that there's more. That well has yet to run dry.
I do have another good cheese story for next time.
Oh, see, there you go.
It's a really good cheese story.
I felt it. Well, you've been an absolute joy to speak with. Thank you for spending some of your precious time with me. That is true.
Thank you very much for having me. No, I really do appreciate it. And hopefully one day I get to come to Seattle again. Otherwise, do you remember how I said it was a really quick journey from New York to Seattle? I'm in New York a lot. So, if you ever fancy making that quick trip, you're very welcome.
Yes, I think I would like very much to see you again, whether it's in Seattle or in New York. And I will do my utmost to try and make it happen. It's been an absolute blast. Huge thanks again. You're an incredible guest. And I really, really appreciate you. Andrew, thank you for all that you do, for all the content that you put out, for all the stories that you bring us all along on the journey, and for expanding our horizons within this watch space. It's truly an honor, and I appreciate you immensely.
Thank you very much for inflating my ego. It's much appreciated.
You're quite welcome. Of course, thank you to everyone that is also tuned in, whether it's via podcast or video format. Thank you for listening, and I'll catch you in the next one. That concludes this episode of the Timist Podcast Series. A sincere thank you for hanging out with us. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, then please push all the buttons that will help you hear more of us in the future. If you'd like to continue the conversation, you can drop a comment in the associated YouTube video or reach out to me on Instagram at TheTimistIG. Thanks for listening. I'm The Timist. Be well, and I'll catch you in the next one.